Welcome. Let's take a look at some examples where we write equations of circles. For the following examples, we want to use the given information to define a circle. So we have an equation for a circle. But to use this equation, we need two pieces of information. We need the location of the center of the circle, which we use the parameters of h, k, and we also need the radius of the circle, which we use a parameter of r. And in this example, we are given the location of the center of the circle. The x value in this location is the parameter of a, and the y value is the parameter of k. So we can start building our equation. We can just place this information in our equation as a placeholder of h, k. Then we're going to have x minus 5 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals, and now we need to figure out what's the value of the radius of the circle. Once we have that information, then we can define our equation. Let's turn on the grid in our plane. Let's look at the center of our circle, and let's choose a point that is either vertically or horizontal to it. Let me choose this point that is directly horizontal to it, to the right-hand side. If we find the distance between the center and this point, which we can see that is of 3 units, then we will have to find the radius of the circle. And notice that this remains true regardless of which point we use in our circle. Let's choose a point that is directly vertical to it. Let me choose this upper point. If I will find the distance from the center to that point, that is still 3 units. So now we can plug in the value of 3 in our equation. Instead of r squared, we're going to have 3 squared. So now we have to find the equation of our circle. Another way that we could have written this equation is instead of writing 3 squared, we could have just left it as 9. But this version of the equation of the circle, it's not preferable. It is not in standard form. We always want to represent it as a value raised to the second exponent. This way, it's very explicit what is the value of the radius of the circle. Well, let's just consider the standard form. Let's take a look at another example. On this second example, we are just given the location of the endpoints, the diameter of a circle. Let's place those points in the coordinate plane. The location of -3, -6, let me call that point A. And the location of -5, -2, let's call that point B. So with this information, we want to find out the center of the circle and the radius of the circle. Because once we have those two pieces of information, then we can define the equation. Let's visualize the situation. If we connect these 2 points, that will be the diameter of the circle. So let's visualize the circle that we want to create. Notice that the center of the circle, it is the midpoint between the 2 points in the diameter of the circle. And once we're able to find out the center of the circle, then we can find the distance of this point to any point in the diameter to define the radius of the circle. So now we have a strategy that we can use to define the equation of the circle. Let's find the center of the circle by finding the midpoint between point A and B. Let's remind ourselves of the midpoint formula. It is the average of the x values, comma, and the average of the y value. So let's plug this information. -5, we're going to consider as x1, and -3, we're going to consider it as x2. -2, let's consider it as y1, and -6, let's consider it as y2. So for the x value, we're going to get -4, and for the y value, we're going to get -4 as well. So now we know the center of the circle. So let's place this down in our diagram. Let me call that C. To find the radius of the circle, it is sufficient to find the distance between the center to either of the 2 given points. Let's find the distance between the center and point B. So let's use the distance formula. So for x1, let's use the value of -5, and for x2, let's use the value of -4. And for y1, let's use the value of -2, and for y2, let's use the value of -4. So now let's simplify. So here we have -5 plus 4, which is -1. And here we have -2 plus 4, which is +2. So now we can say the distance between those 2 points is of the square root of 5. So we can say that the radius of the circle is of the square root of 5. And now that we have all this information, let's plug it in to our formula. We're going to let h have a value of -4. We're going to let k have a value of -4 as well. And we're going to let r have a value of square root of 5. We can simplify our equation a little bit further. Minus a minus, let's write it as a plus. And minus a minus, let's write it as a plus. And on the right hand side, let's keep it as the square root of 5 squared. Hello. If you would like to continue learning about mathematics, you can check out the videos on the left.